Welcome back to another episode of Card Talk, a podcast where we spend just a little bit of time talking about cards from Lord of the Rings card game. I'm your host, Dave Walsh.
And I'm Ted Beck, and I love talking about cards just a little bit. I was talking about some cards a little bit, and I think what I'm going to do is try to take the load off David on this episode, because he's my shining silver. You're my silver in the rough, Dave.
Oh yeah, is that you transitioning back to me when you said my name?
It's gonna be a great episode. I'm really excited. It's gonna be a great episode.
Well, before we get into the episode, let's first of all figure out a way that anybody can plug into us. We have a vibrant YouTube channel where you can see all of these episodes recorded with you can see Ted's face, my face. You can see the art, the cards pop up as we talk about them. That was actually the original inspiration for doing Card Talk, was coming up with the YouTube channel. We do have the audio feed. Matt over at the blog, he's our blog master, and so he does. He's over there reviewing all the cards that we talk about on the pod, one card at a time, and then Micah's doing our second breakfast, playing quests live on our YouTube channel. So, we have ways to get a hold of us. If you look, we have the blog cardtalk2018.com. We have email, get a hold of Ted, Grant, or myself. Grant's not here for this ride, but you can get cardtalk2018 at gmail.com, and then we have, of course, our Patreon. You can help keep the lights on and the words flowing out of the blog over at patreon.com/cardtalk2018. And that is enough of my talk. Ted, what is today's card?
Let's take a shot reviewing today's card, Silverlode Archer.
Yes. How'd you know?
I have my ways.
Oh, okay.
I have my ways, Dave.
That's good.
You think the eyes of Ted's tower are blind? Not so. Silverlode Archer comes from the core set. It's a leadership ally that has a cost of 3, and you might think, well, Ted and Dave, what might I get for a cost of 3 resources? I'll tell you. You get 1 willpower, 2 attacks, 0 defense, 1 hit points, traits Archer and Sylvan, and the keyword ranged, this ally.
Before we get started, Ted, can you name any other card with the Archer keyword?
Horseback Archer.
No.
Hobbit Archer.
Hobbit Archer is it?
That's the one I was thinking.
That's
of.
the only other one.
Archer only Rohan? I think it's
only Rohan.
Oh boy. Yeah, traits that were never developed.
Yes.
This here.
The Archer trait. And I think actually Caleb came on the show and said that, or maybe it was Jeremy, it's like, it's the Hobbit Archer was kind of a joke, because there was no other archers, and why not name the Hobbit Archer? Just name it the Hobbit Archer, since it's a Hobbit and an Archer.
Sure.
It's kind of funny. So, but this show is about the Silverlode Archer, which doesn't have the trait Silverlode, but has the trait Sylvan, right?
Yeah, yeah. So Dave, you're a Sylvan-y dude. You're a slippery Sylvan-y dude. Right. You have multiple recorded and posted playthroughs with your Sylvan deck.
Yep.
So you have a lot of experience with this archetype. So why don't you? I guess we should talk about 2 things: where it fits into the card pool, like by itself, and then how to get the most run out of it inside the Sylvan.
Inside the Sylvan archetype.
Well, because if you have maybe not the entire card pool. Right. This might maybe have different run length for you.
Right. I know what you're saying. Like, you have to look at the card in and of itself. Like, okay, is this card good or not good?
Because everyone's going to have this.
Right.
Right?
It comes
from the core set.
Core set. It was actually reprinted in the 2-player limited. Which is funny, and then and then right, the starter, right, 2-player starter, and then it actually, of course, came back out in the revised core set. So it's like, yeah, I don't know, but the card itself, when you're playing just the core set and you have a limited card pool, this card is all right. Okay, so it's 3 cost, and I think at the very beginning of the game, I can't dig into Nate's mind as he was developing this, but I think that they kind of overcosted the ranged keyword. Like, that ranged keyword is important, and there's not a ton of heroes or a ton of characters that have ranged, and so I think they were saying, well, this is a ranged character, and so we're going to make that worth a little bit more. For anybody who is new to the game or relatively new, typically the stats plus hit points is what adds up to the cost. And so this is overcosted by 1. This should be a 2-cost ally. And I think if it were a 2-cost ally, it would be played all the time. But this is a 3-cost is really where it falls short. It's great that it's, it's very Sylvan-y with 2 attack. It's very Sylvan-y with 1 hit point. It kind of fits that mold. But if you're going to spend 3 for a Sylvan ally with ranged, you're going to bring out the Marksman of Lorien every time. Like
who's a tactics ally.
A tactics ally, right?
Okay.
And so, and if you're going to want a 2-attack ranged leadership ally, you're going to bring out the Greenwood Archer. Who's a leadership and cost 1 and ready as a hero when he comes into play.
The Greenwood Archer is essentially this same character, but it has an ability and a lower cost.
Right. And it lacks the willpower. It doesn't have the willpower.
Yes.
So if you're playing this in a limited card pool, like you don't have the Elves of Lorien starter deck, this is decent. I'm teaching a buddy of mine how to play this game from like the ground up. And so we were like, get the revised core set, get the Dark of Mirkwood, start there, play all the starter decks. And he likes this card. It's 2 attack, which is all right, but I would hazard a guess that this card gets very quickly replaced once you buy the Elves of Lorien starter deck with a lot of those things.
Yeah, I forgot about the starter decks. There's some pretty decent cards in the starter decks, too.
There are, and this is not one of them. And so I think that this would be a fun card to have. I don't know. There's just so many Sylvans, and there's so many ranged Sylvans that do stuff that this card just gets replaced very quickly. Like I could go through a million, like the Galathon Archer, comes into play, 2-cost tactics and does a damage to something. Rumil is a 4-cost tactics and comes into play and does damage equal to the number of range characters you control.
It's a hefty list.
Orphan. Yeah. Orphan is a ranged, Sylvan character that brings somebody back from your discard pile into your hand, and is 3 cost, has 2 willpower and 2 attack, so and 2 hit points. So, and that's in the same sphere. So that this card, unless you have some sort of unique, I don't know, what do I want to say? Like unique conflicts, and you want to bring out even more ranged Sylvans, this gets replaced very quickly with a lot of those things, because a Sylvan deck is typically, is using 2, 3, 4 spheres. Like leadership being one of them.
Yep.
And of course, I mean, I would talk about Galadriel and Celeborn, but Galadriel, when they come into play, they don't exhaust a quest. Celeborn gives everybody +1 willpower, +1 attack, +1 defense, but that's true for all the Sylvans.
Right.
So it's not like this is different. It's not like, Celeborn causes everybody but the Silverlode Archer to get +1 and the Silverlode Archer gets +2 or so, you still just have to compare it based on its base things. I don't know. I mean, I could talk for hours, but Ted, we do this together, so let's. What do you have?
So if I were to summarize, I think what you're saying is basically inside the Sylvan archetype, which for someone new to the game, if they picked up one or all of the starter decks, they may be introduced to because of that starter deck. I would say that this ally, there's quickly better choices simply because of basically just that one extra resource. I think you're right. If this guy costed 2, it would be a much better card, but it's not. For 3, I'd love to see an extra attack or an extra, I'd love an extra hit point on this guy. He'd be so much better.
He would be 100%.
Yeah, like the 1 willpower is nice because inside leadership you do have willpower boosting. In the core set, for example, you have Faramir, who's a leadership ally that gives a targeted player +1 willpower. So, okay, if you're short on willpower, he counts as a character, and you target yourself with Faramir. Now he's going for 2. So there's some, things you can do. I would say, though, I think you're right. If you have a limited card pool, or if you are playing a mono leadership deck and you're maybe going to a convention or you're playing multiplayer with a group of friends, like 3 or 4 players, having range on the table is very helpful. And leadership does tend to have some extra resources to spare. So they can kind of afford the, extra cost, the overpricedness that we're judging it by. And so it can be good if you have a smaller card pool, or if you're just trying to get ranged characters inside the leadership sphere, which is a couple other that we named. Although there's Greenwood Archer and Hobbit Archer, both of which are better choices because they cost less. But if you were trying to get the maximum ranged characters, you're like, I love leadership and I want as much range in your deck. You could run all of those allies, right? That's it. So all the allies in your deck are ranged. So when you're playing multiplayer, you're going to be putting ranged attack on the table. That can be really helpful in those larger player size games. But generally speaking, a tad overpriced and a bit fragile with 1 hit point. But it's at the table, and I've used it both to attack and to quest. But if you have a full size card pool, unfortunately, I don't. Even in a Sylvan deck, doesn't make the cut.
The only other thing that I can say to knock this guy is that one of the linchpins of the Sylvan deck is those 0 cost events like Tree People and Island Amid Perils and Quicker Than Sight and Elf Guide. There's a slew. There's 15 or 18 0 cost events, and with the exception of Island Amid Perils, which reduces your threat by the cost of the ally, you don't want to bring expensive allies back into your hand and then have to replay them. Now, you don't mind tree peopling into a more expensive ally, but you have to balance those Sylvan decks with 0 cost, with low cost allies and high cost allies, so that you can, so that you're not cycling high cost allies to bring out low, there's a balance there. Mm-hmm. And this guy loses on that, on that account too.
There's Island of Perils reduces your threat based on the ally's cost, so you would get an additional threat reduction off him. But yeah, a lot of the events are not based on the ally's cost. A good chunk of them are not.
Yeah, just the one.
Is that okay?
Like I said, Island Amid Perils is... I forget what the tactics one is, because I don't know. It's not Scout Ahead, but it's...
No, it's...
But it's something. But the Island Amid Perils allows you to reduce your threat by the cost of the ally you're returning to your hand.
Yeah.
So...
Yeah. So overall, not so great. Speaking of not so great, let's talk about the art.
I think that pretty much sums it up. I just feel like it's a not a very good piece of art. I mean, I know it's the core set and you want the core set to, they were hitting their stride, but it's just not. I don't even know what's going on here. There's like lily pads in the background. I guess maybe the Silverlode is a river stream, so I don't know. It just looks not very like this game.
Yeah, like it starts like, okay, you have an elf, in like elf garb along the river.
Almost looks like he's got like a little mustache on.
Yeah, and it's really weird because he's crouching in this picture, which if I don't actually zoom into it, I almost think that like the rock cliff that he's standing on is like actually his legs.
Yep.
I get a really weird vibe when I look at it. I'm sure the artist did their work and interpreted this and did the best interpretation that they thought they would be, but it's a bit bizarre, and the colors are a bit dull just compared to some of the other really great artwork we've seen. It's kind of mediocre.
Yeah. And because it's not unique, like, I mean, it could have been a bunch of we're not representing necessarily something in the book that has like a look other than elves, like it's like it's elfy a little bit. I don't even see like long hair flowing out of the elf. Not that that's a linchpin of elf lookalikes, but I don't know. Anyways,
yeah.
Should we ring this guy?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, if you like it, you got to put a ring on it.
Okay, well, I'm definitely not going to do that. So, everybody, if you are unfamiliar, or maybe this is the first time you've caught Card Talk, we have a highly scientific yet arbitrary system where we rank a card on a scale from 1 to 10, where 1 ring is the one card to rule them all, or one of the best cards in the game, and a 10 is the card that we throw back into the fiery chasm from whence it was made, or not a very good card in the game. So, Ted, I'll let you go first.
I do have some fondness for this card because I played the core set when the card pool was very small, and this card, it saw a lot of play, and that ranged came into play quite a bit. But if you have the full card pool, it just doesn't cut it. It's too expensive, and I'm usually I'm gonna give it a 9 because it's got too much competition even inside its own sphere to still be good. And
yeah, we didn't even touch on like other cards if you want to put other ranged cards in your deck, like, or just other, attacky cards in your deck. Like,
yeah,
pick any of them. There's a whole bunch of dwarves. There's a whole bunch of, like leadership that you can just pick.
Yeah, the range is not useless. Like two range is good. There just happens to be a lot of selection that you can get now, and so it's the rating I'm gonna give it in terms of a small card pool. But I don't want that to shine anyone away from like, oh, I shouldn't play. Like, no, like you'd be surprised how much it but at 1 hit point, when this guy dies due to whatever treachery, you're like, man, I wish I had 3 resources instead of a dead elf. But how about you, Dave?
Yeah, I mean, I agree that the ranged is worth something, and I think that's why this guy was worth a bunch more than what he should be when he was first released. So, so that's why it's going to be worth a 9 to me. I really would like to give him a 10, but I think if you're playing core set, this guy comes out. You're not. I don't know. You're not. It's not horrible. You know, when you get Flame of Honor and you know this guy's on the top of the deck, and for 3, you know, you can increase your attack by 3 for Gandalf or something. But
sure. Yeah, same reason. Like it's seen play, but like, do I have any plans to incorporate any of my current, or next decks that I build? It's very, very unlikely, even in the Sylvan archetype.
Yeah, I'm not trying to build a deck around the Silverlode Archer.
Yeah.
And that's coming from the guy who builds all sorts of variations on the Sylvan deck. So I don't know. Well,
that's what we got, kids.
So that's it. So join us next week as we talk about a card that hopefully we like a little bit more than this one. Have a great day.
Do you love the content? Here's what you can do to stay connected. Become a patron. The money collected through Patreon goes into keeping the lights on here at the podcast. We love our patrons, and you can join at many different levels. Visit patreon.com/cardtalk2018. You can subscribe to us, whether you're watching our YouTube channel or you're listening to us in your favorite podcatcher. Hit the subscribe button to get notifications of all our new episodes. Didn't know we were an audio podcast? Find us by searching Card Talk to get access to our 120 plus regular episodes. Didn't know we were a video channel? Find us by searching Card Talk LOTR LCG on YouTube. And there you can find not only our regular episodes, but you can find our bonus playthroughs and other content related to the game. Want to get a hold of Ted, Grant, or myself? Feel free to email the podcast at cardtalk2018@gmail.com.